World War II, the deadliest conflict in human history. A war fought on every continent, in every ocean, by nearly every nation. But what we often hear are only the surface-level stories of heroism, strategy, and triumph. Beneath these tales lie chilling secrets and horrifying atrocities that shook the very foundations of civilization. Today, we'll uncover the darkest truths behind World War II that have remained buried for decades. Before the guns of war roared, backdoor negotiations and secret deals set the stage for the global conflict. One of the most significant, yet often overlooked, was the Nazi-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact of 1939. Adolf Hitler and Joseph Stalin, two ideological enemies, came together to carve up Eastern Europe. In a secret clause of the pact, they agreed to divide Poland between them, setting off the chain of events that plunged the world into war. While the world was shocked by Germany's invasion of Poland, few realized that the Soviet Union was just as complicit in the destruction of this nation. This hidden alliance between fascism and communism shattered the hopes for peace and allowed the war to begin in earnest. Hitler's betrayal of Stalin in 1941, known as Operation Barbarossa, was one of the largest military operations in history. But beyond the battles and strategic blunders lies a deeper horror, what the Nazis planned for the people of the Soviet Union. Hitler's plan wasn't just to conquer the Soviet Union, but to wipe out entire populations. The infamous General Plan Ost aimed for the genocide of tens of millions of Slavs, Jews, and other undesirable groups. Villages were burned, civilians were executed, and starvation was used as a weapon. The siege of Leningrad, where over 1 million civilians perished, is one of the starkest examples of the atrocities committed during Barbarossa. One of the most well-known, yet incomprehensible horrors of World War II is the Holocaust. 6 million Jews, along with millions of Romani, disabled individuals, political prisoners, and others, were systematically exterminated in a network of concentration and death camps. But what many do not know is how the Nazi regime turned murder into an industry. Camps like Auschwitz and Treblinka weren't just places of death. They were meticulously designed death factories. From the selection processes at the railheads to the gas chambers and crematoria, everything was engineered for maximum efficiency in killing. Yet, the world stood by for years, with many governments turning a blind eye to reports of the genocide. While Europe burned, the Pacific Theater saw its own horrors. The Japanese Empire, in its quest to dominate Asia, committed unspeakable atrocities across the region. From China to the Philippines, millions suffered under their brutal occupation. One of the most horrific events was the Rape of Nanking, where Japanese soldiers slaughtered an estimated 300,000 Chinese civilians in a matter of weeks. Mass rapes, beheadings, and executions were carried out with shocking cruelty. Across Asia, millions of civilians were forced into slavery, and women were taken as comfort women, a euphemism for sexual slavery. The Japanese military's use of biological warfare, particularly in Unit 731, remains one of the darkest secrets of the war. Prisoners of war and civilians were subjected to live vivisections, forced infection with deadly diseases, and unimaginable torture. On August 6, 1945, the world entered the nuclear age with the dropping of the first atomic bomb on Hiroshima, followed by a second on Nagasaki 3 days later. The official narrative holds that these bombings ended the war, but the reality is far more complicated and far more tragic. Over 200,000 people were killed, most of them civilians, but the suffering didn't end with the explosions. Survivors, known as hibakusha, faced decades of radiation sickness, cancer, and birth defects. The morality of using such weapons on civilian populations remains one of the most debated topics in history. What was clear, however, was that the world had crossed a threshold into an era of unimaginable destruction. While the Allies fought to free the world from tyranny, they were not without their own controversies. The strategic bombing campaigns, particularly in Germany and Japan, resulted in the deaths of hundreds of thousands of civilians. The firebombing of Dresden in 1945, where a historic city was reduced to rubble, is often cited as an unnecessary act of destruction. Similarly, in Japan, cities like Tokyo were razed to the ground by firebombs, killing more civilians than even the atomic bombs. As the war came to a close, there were also widespread reprisals against Axis-aligned civilians, especially in Eastern Europe, where millions were expelled or killed in retaliation for Nazi atrocities. World War II is often viewed through the lens of Europe and the Pacific, but it was truly a global conflict. Millions of soldiers from Africa, India, and the Middle East fought in the war, often with little recognition for their sacrifices. Colonial subjects were conscripted to fight for their colonial masters, yet their contributions have largely been forgotten. After the war, many of these nations were left devastated, with little support from the powers they had served. The war also ignited independence movements across the colonized world, leading to a wave of decolonization in the decades that followed. World War II was a war of extremes. It brought out the very worst and the very best of humanity. Nations were torn apart, entire populations were targeted for extermination, and weapons of unimaginable power were unleashed. But out of the ashes of this conflict, the modern world was born. The secrets and atrocities of World War II are a stark reminder that war is never simple, and its true cost is often hidden from view. We must remember these dark chapters, not just to honor the dead, but to ensure that such horrors are never repeated. Thank you for watching. If you found this video insightful, please like, subscribe, and click the notification bell for more untold history from Who Knows. Stay tuned for our next video, where we continue to uncover the secrets of the past.